Hello, everyone, and welcome to the CSC Town Hall event, Building the Foundation for Digital Insurance. My name is Jeff Caruso. I'll be your moderator. I'm Senior Managing Editor at CSC, and we are very proud to bring you the CSC Town Hall. Traditional insurers face nimble new competitors, heightened customer expectations, and increased cost pressures. In this marketplace, traditional approaches to IT infrastructure and application development are simply too slow, inflexible, and lacking in integration to enable them to compete. Today, we'll talk about what insurers need to do to build their foundation for digital insurance. Before we introduce our panelists, I'd like to let you know this event is being streamed online, not only inside the Town Hall environment at csc.com, but also on CSC's Google Plus page and on our YouTube channel. Viewers are welcome to submit questions you'd like me to bring to the panel's attention. Just post the questions to Twitter with the hashtag CSC Town Hall as one word, and I'll pick out the best questions and post them to the panel. Our first guest today is Sabita Majukumar, and Sabita is Senior Research Analyst for Financial Insights at IDC. Sabita, thanks for being here.
Thank you, Jeff. Happy to be part of this town hall. Thank you.
Thanks. Our next guest is Willie Reed, and Willie is Vertical Director at EMC. Willie, glad you could join us.
Great, thank you for having me.
And our next guest is Brian Wallace, and Brian is CTO for Insurance at CSC. So, Brian, welcome to the program.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. Really looking forward to the discussion with EMC and IDC.
Thanks. Now let's start by looking broadly. From a technology perspective, what's happening in the insurance industry today? Brian?
Yeah, so Jeff, it's a fantastic time actually to be working in the insurance industry. If you've worked in insurance for a while, you could look back and say that this has been a pretty stable industry. Right now, we are experiencing a level, a magnitude, a velocity of change that's literally unprecedented in the history of insurance, and certainly anyone within our lifetimes, our careers. So it's the same kind of wave of disruptive forces that have rippled through other industries, lesser insulated industries than say banking or insurance or healthcare, but it is clearly our turn. All of that disruptive change is knocking on our door, and insurance companies, carriers, insurers, and all the stakeholders are very, very excited about it and really trying to move quickly to take advantage of all that new digital capability. It's insurance though, right? So without a whole lot of change, and in some part, I guess due to the nature of the products, we've let our systems get a little old in the tooth, so we're carrying a fair bit of legacy debt into this new period of disruption. So on one hand, we end up calling it from a CSC perspective the dual agenda of insurance, this notion of wanting to lay down new and innovative greenfield capability, but at the same time recognizing that really once and for all we need to deal with this legacy debt challenge. So the good news is we see lots of evidence that insurance companies are progressing through that and working through those challenges. And looking across the customers that we work with and work with in partnership with EMC, I see three themes come out. I see one centered around customer engagement, so a real front office centric view of rethinking, reimagining the brand experience for the customer, taking advantage of all the new digital capabilities. I see a lot of emphasis on analytics and data. Data is the asset that we manage as an industry, so with all the new capabilities around Hadoop and NoSQL and the analytic models, you can see how insurers would get very, very excited about all the things they could do to transform literally every part of their value chain. And then the third area we see a lot of activity just centers around what I call consumption. It's really around shifting away from the traditional capital-intensive, bespoke applications and infrastructure, retained, stewarded assets, and moving into this as-a-service API economy. So kind of three themes there, and if you think about it, there's two common patterns across those themes. One is we see successful insurance companies looking to sort of play that game of lay down some new innovative greenfield, some new digital capability, and use that as a catalyst, if you will, as a trigger to transform the middle and back office and some of that legacy footprint. And then the second thread, and this is really why what we mean when we say the foundation for digital insurance on this town hall, is that whether you're trying to implement new digital systems of engagement, whether you're standing up Hadoop and NoSQL data lakes, or whether you're really just trying to take advantage of consumption economics and rethink your back office and move into the sort of as-a-service economy, all of those things have one thing in common, and that is leverage and exploitation of cloud computing. And so it's really whether you think about it from a business perspective or an IT perspective, the objective and the foundational step that all insurance companies are trying to take right now, and trying to take not from an experimental perspective, but from an industrial, systematic perspective, is that movement into cloud and elastic infrastructure. And that's what we'll talk about today.
Okay, thanks. All right, Sabita, would you agree with that? Maybe you can talk a little bit about some of the challenges that you're seeing that insurers are facing that are driving the agenda that Brian just laid out.
Yeah, I think Brian gave a very good overview of where the insurance companies are going today and how these technologies are actually driving some of the business decisions when compared to the previous years where the business drives the technology adoption and not the other way around. So we are seeing that interesting shift in the industry just now. And in terms of the challenges, yes, we do very in-depth analysis of the challenges in the industry. And based on our analysis, we see some interesting trends and challenges in the industry today. And I look at these challenges in 5 broad perspectives, I would say. So one, the most important one, I would say, is the customer perspective. Today's customer, they are very, very demanding, and they demand for anytime, anywhere, seamless insurance buying and service experience. And what they want from their insurance companies are, they don't want the insurers to be just product sellers. They want them to be risk advisors, and they want them to be providing an exceptional customer service experience throughout the policy lifecycle, and not just at the time of quote, new business, or claims. And so that is from a customer point of view. From a distributor point of view, and that is my second perspective, I would say, distributors are expecting business on the move from their insurance companies, and they also want insurers to be easy to do business with. Basically, what that means is they want the proper back office integration so that they can seamlessly service their customers. So that is the expectation from the distributor community. The third aspect, I would say, is the competition. Very interesting kind of competition is on the rise, and we have new entrants, non-traditional players, new entrants in the form of, say, peer-to-peer insurance, similar to what we see in banking for peer-to-peer lending. And so we have these new entrants and non-traditional players, and on top of that, what we are saying is we have this autonomous vehicles, semi-autonomous vehicles, and then we have advanced risk management capabilities. So these things are actually challenging the very relevance of traditional insurance coverages. So this is one of the perspective that I'm observing. And the fourth important one is the cost perspective. So there are rising technology costs, and insurance companies are really struggling to live with the old and embrace the new. And I think that is in line with what Brian has been saying also. So they have the legacy problem, they do have it, but they are trying to find out ways to tackle them. And increased M&A activities are there, merger and acquisition activities are there, which results in increased integration costs, and we have competitive pricing in the market, low interest rates. So all these are posing one kind of challenge or other to the industry. Last but not the least, I'll talk a bit about the regulatory risks. We have new and emerging risks out there in the form of data breaches, cybersecurity threats, and insurers are really struggling to retain the trust factor with the customer, and that is one side of it. And the other side, they have a wonderful opportunity out there to offer innovative products and coverages for certain trends like the, say, cyber insurance coverage or shared economies coverage for shared economy. So they're losing out on those opportunities sometimes because of a lack of understanding of the risk exposures and risk assessment capabilities. So it's an interesting time, just like Brian said. And what I'm seeing is, even though all these challenges are out there, on a positive note, Insurers are traditionally having a wait and watch approach. They are drifting away from that, and they are now ready to embrace the technologies, these new technologies, like never before. So that's a very positive note, I would say.
Okay, thanks. And with that, Willie, maybe we could talk a little bit more about how IT may play a role in addressing some of the challenges that are facing the industry.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I think that the role IT has is managing, managing this transition. We've got environments that we have bare metal, we've got mainframe, we've got virtualized x86 environments, we have hyper-converged and now cloud kind of models coming in. So there's a real transition going, I think, to support what we've built the business on in the past, as well as to continue to innovate and leverage some of the technologies that Sabitha just kind of talked through as well. So I think that we need to understand that legacy environment. We need to embrace it. We need to take ownership of it and really take a look at what are the data, what are the applications in that environment that maybe I can virtualize or maybe I can move into a newer environment. And that's really a key role for the for the CIOs and the IT directors out there to really have that look into what is in the environment that I need to manage. Another key thing around this is the ability to look at to look at what's coming down the pipe. What can I leverage from an innovation perspective, right? Maybe there's something I want to do differently from a DevOps perspective, or maybe from my test environments that I want to maybe run those in a separate model that I do for my other part of my organization. So I think that's a real key piece that they need to really do. And the other thing is, I think organizations, regardless of whether it's mainframe, whether it's virtualized, whether it's hyper-converged, what have you, the key is security and the key is data protection as well. Is we've got to make sure that whatever data that we're managing in these environments, we have some kind of control and some kind of security around that, so that you don't have issues with breaches or data loss in that regards. And I think setting up those policies and setting up almost a service bureau for those organizations is real key for our IT organizations to really think about as individuals.
Okay, thanks. I think your audio is getting a little bit muffled, but I'm going to ask you if you might be able to zero in on some of the critical elements that IT teams should consider.
Sure, definitely. And if you look at kind of the newer world, right? We've had virtualization now for quite some time. We've got software-defined environments that are starting to take shape, whether it's software-defined networking or software-defined storage. The real key, I think, that's important is understanding what's out there and what we can leverage today. So a couple of key technologies we see in what we call the modern data center, right? The ability for me to take those applications and move them into a virtualized environment where I can and take advantage of some modern infrastructure. We see things like modern storage, things like flash, software-defined storage, that meets the needs of the block and file and object environments, but allows me to scale up and scale down in the capacity and performance that I need for given applications. We see converged infrastructure playing a very big part of this, right? The ability to manage more with less, and I think that's a real key part as you start to see costs inside the IT organization shifting, right? I want to innovate more. I want to spend less on keeping the lights on and spend more on app development and DevOps and things like that. So we want to shift and make it easier for people to manage more with less, and I think that's a great way to do it is through hyper or converged infrastructure in that environment. And finally, I think the piece that's the most interesting is the cloud element, right? The ability to look at leveraging third-party services or even creating a cloud within my own organization to provide services out to the different consumers inside of my company. So maybe I want to push DevOps out to a cloud, or maybe I want to have a hybrid approach where some of that lies internally. Maybe I want to leverage Amazon or Azure, or maybe I want to leverage services from CSC like BizCloud to take on some of the and offload some of those systems. So again, I think the cloud models are definitely something we should embrace as we move forward as well.
Okay, thanks. All right, quick reminder to our live audience, if you're watching this live, please post your questions to Twitter with the hashtag CSC Town Hall, and we'll see if we can get those questions in. So let's move on and talk about some of the considerations when planning to upgrade your infrastructure. Brian?
Yeah, so again, there's lots to think about. Savita laid out a lot of the challenges of trying to do this in insurance, really laid out the art of the possible there. So from our experience doing this, working with EMC and some of our other cloud partners, I'll try to tease out the things that I think make are most relevant for insurance. So I'll start with the notion that given the fact that this is insurance and we do have a large legacy footprint, this whole kind of transformation of our infrastructure landscape is going to be a journey, it's not going to be an event. And the implication there is that in the short run, for many insurers, we're really talking about adding diversity and to some extent complexity into the environment before we ultimately are able to rationalize some of those older platforms out of the picture. So it's really about contemplating the coexistence of everything that Willie mentioned in terms of the old technology, the mainframe, the x86, the bare metal virtualized infrastructure, along with everything, hyper-converged, converged all the way out to public cloud. So just recognizing that for a period of time, all of that is going to need to coexist, and to some extent, we're going to make the situation a little bit more challenging. But again, sort of anecdotally, we see that the business benefits that stem from that are proving to be worthwhile. I think the second thing, and again, both Savita and Willie talked about different scenarios, it's really important for insurers in particular to keep in mind that cloud is not a one-size-fits-all proposition. So it's really about contemplating the workload, what's the business objective that we're trying to achieve here. Willie talked about DevOps, Savita talked about regulatory compliance concerns, data sovereignty issues, those kinds of things, right? So keeping all of that in mind, it's about matching the workload to the right kind of cloud environment, recognizing that as insurers go on this journey, they may start with one, they may start with a private cloud, that's a real common pattern, but ultimately they need to recognize that there's lots of sort of arrows in the quiver there. I think another thing is we contemplate this notion of increasing the diversity and the complexity of the environment. We need to recognize that humans are the weak link in the chain. We're good at kind of figuring out and designing what that new world should look like, but the actual day-to-day operations, to the extent that we can leverage what Willie defined there, described as software-defined infrastructure. The hot skill in infrastructure these days is programming and software development, right? Because the opportunity in front of us is to automate a whole lot of what we do today manually, and with that automation comes, the confidence that we are consistently and in a compliant fashion executing all of the things that keep the CIO awake at night. And then maybe I thought I'd just end with data, because Savita did raise data, and I think data is the asset we manage in insurance, and it's the driver in some respects for a lot of the aspirations here around technology. So when we think about data and insurance, you got to remember what Savita said. This is a highly regulated environment, so it's really important then that whole kind of data sovereignty issue. We need to keep that in mind, and so that might have us thinking about private cloud for some of our more sensitive workloads, and different cloud deployment options for other workloads. As it relates to data, I'd also say insurers are moving into this world of almost unprecedented data volumes. So if you think about multimedia, we got images, we got videos, we've got social media, we've got IoT, and so the diversity of the data, the amount of data that we're storing, and the velocity with which we're ingesting that data is all stuff that's brand new for insurers. And the cloud, with this kind of elastic consumption-based economics, really ought to be top of mind again in that regard. And then just the last thing is this notion of as we start to get more and more data, we've talked about the location of that data. We also run into some problems around just moving that data around, getting it all in one place in order to run reports or run queries. And then we continue to, we've got to think about that from a network bandwidth perspective again, and a repository perspective. And then we've got some concerns around contestability and portability, right? As we move data into public clouds, it's easy to blow up an app and then reconstitute that app in another environment. But if you've got petabytes of data running out in that public cloud, moving that data over is different. So it's really important we think about application workload different than data, and it's really important we keep on top of some of the new things that are coming out, like federated queries that allow us to leave that data where it is and address the business problem. And that kind of technology can help us with contestability, with data sovereignty, and with network capacity, cost, all sorts of things. So that's a kind of a smattering of considerations from our experience. I don't know, Willie, have you got anything to add to that?
All right. Well, thank you. Sabita, maybe you could talk about what are some of the common barriers to this digital transformation that Brian was just talking about?
Yeah, I think the interesting bit is, unlike the previous years, insurance companies are aware that the transformation, and especially infrastructure transformation, will give them the platform required for growth and also empower their staff to do business day in, day out. So it's not that they are not aware, but it's just that all these major barriers are out there. And another interesting part is that they are slowly trying to find out ways out of it also, which is really good. But just coming back on the barriers, the major one, the topmost one, I would say, based on our conversations with various insurance CXOs, is the barrier of the legacy. I think I'm echoing what Brian and Willie has already explained here, but legacy is a major problem there, and it can be a major barrier for an insurance company's aspirations to become truly digital. And aging applications are a biggest threat, and these are threats which are bigger than the data security issues and other factors like or budget constraints or whatnot. And I think the problem here is that insurers have made major investments in the past on these systems, and now they have a major mind block to do another investment and just get away with everything and then do another major investment on any of these systems. So that's one of the major problems that we are seeing. Then comes the manual processes. So I have been on the floor working with customer service representatives in insurance companies, and mainly in the life and pensions side, if you see, there are lots of manual processes which the companies still employ. And unless the back office automation is in place, the organizations, they will be impacted by the lack of resource availability to build a truly digital enterprise. So that is one of the things that we are seeing as a major barrier. And another one, which is much talked about, is the data protection and regulation issues. Insurers do have skepticism in adopting public cloud for their core systems, which we are seeing as a major trend. But the thing is, improved security management practices, which are getting introduced these days, and providers are also coming up with such innovative solutions to address such problems. I think we will see a change in the coming years. Then comes the culture issues. The culture issues and the lack of innovative mindset. It is changing, which is positive, but insurers should have an environment where their staff and their partners and everyone can attempt and they should have an environment to attempt first and then fail fast and learn fast, I would say. So that kind of environment should exist. But the thing is, like I said earlier, they are drifting away from the wait and watch mentality, and they are trying to address it. And I think that kind of an environment will help them address the other challenge, which is about the talent shortage. So many millennials think of insurance companies as boring places to work. So one side we have all these new technologies coming up. We have a major need of new and fresh talent. But talent is not getting into these companies because of this closed mindset. I think they have to really come out of it, and we are seeing positive signs in that area as well.
Okay, thanks. I'll say, Brian, how do we deal with some of these barriers, including, insurance is boring?
Yeah, I mean, Savita laid it out, right? She talked about legacy footprint, legacy debt. She talked about regulation. She talked about culture, and she talked about talent. I don't know that I see a silver bullet for all of those things, but if I look at the insurance companies that are making the most progress, that are demonstrating success, I think I see 3 or 4 things that I'd call out. So, and we've touched on them, right? So, the obvious one when you think about talent and expertise. So, pick a set of partners that have already kind of worked out the end-to-end story, right? So, and I think that's what we represent here today. Number two, I'd say take advantage of automation. So there are some pretty great platforms out there and new innovations coming around on service management, cloud management, and in particular, really look for opportunities to automate policy, because it's that automated policy execution and governance that really is going to make this successful across the enterprise. We talked about matching workload to the right cloud. I don't think we need to say more there. I do think it's in insurance really important to think about data separate from the application and to really explore the art of the possible in terms of that spectrum of cloud platforms. And then finally, I'd say, embrace the philosophies that are coming out of the startup world, right? So think about lean management and minimal viable products. Start small, do this incrementally, focus on learning, and focus on the culture change that Savita talked about. And then once you get some wins and you get some progress, then look to scale out with a proven kind of industrialized at-scale deployment.
Okay, thanks. All right, now we're coming towards the end here, so let's try to keep the answers pretty short. But Willie, I know you want to talk about what perhaps other technical capabilities IT organizations should think about.
Yeah, definitely. I'll tie on to kind of what Brian had mentioned there just a few moments ago. Again, I think we talked about a couple of key tools that are out there, and hybrid cloud is a model. It's definitely, you can look at it in that way, and I think that having the management to go along with that, the tools that help you manage those environments is real key. So if you look at how do I automate, maybe even create a service catalog for my organization, how do I allow my app development teams and my my marketing teams potentially, as an example, spin up a new environment very quickly to react to a new need in the market. Maybe I need a Hadoop cluster on the fly and let that run. That's something you can set up very easily in a hybrid cloud model and automate through a tool set. And we've seen a number of those tool sets out in the market that work very well. And again, CSC being a leader in that space as well. Another area that we see is leveraging big data, right? We haven't really touched on analytics. Brian talked a little bit about data lakes earlier on, and I think that's another key tool. As you look at infrastructure and you look at partners and capabilities, the ability for that infrastructure to support things like tool sets like Hadoop and other things allows you flexibility to create data lakes. Essentially, allows you to pull data from other parts of your organization, do comparisons across that, and come up with new insights into your business. Again, I think those are two real key tools that IT organizations should put in their toolbox as they look at their new infrastructure.
Okay, thanks. We got a question from Twitter. I just want to try to work this in, and I'll just throw it out to the group. How is digital insurance transformation different in different regions? Any thoughts on that? Maybe Brian?
Yeah, I will say I have the opportunity to travel all over the world and talk to insurance companies, customers, and prospects. And I'll say there are a few differences, but for once, I would say that the entire industry is more or less coalescing around a common agenda, the agenda that Savita and I laid out at the beginning of this town hall. So other than some regulatory differences, because Savita talked about how do insurers want to put their core admin system on the cloud? In some regions, you just can't do that. There's too much PII in there. We've got customers, though, in other regions who are running core policy administration systems on public cloud. So regulatory for sure is a big one. I suspect culture, although culture to me tends to go from company to company, not so much region to region. But it's a surprisingly consistent agenda.
Yeah, just to add to that, Jeff, I think what we are seeing is we categorize the digital transformation players, explorers, players, then transformers, and then disruptors. We at ITC we categorize them into different groups, and what we are seeing is around 64% of the players, both in the player space as well as in the explorer space. We see around 64% of them. We don't see much in the transformer or the disruptor space, and that is true even for the insurance industry as well. So it's not really about regions, although we are seeing major traction in the matured markets like US and UK.
Okay, thanks. All right, so we're coming towards the end of our time, so I just want to give each one of you a chance to speak. 60 seconds for each of you. Willie, talk about some specific examples of these technologies in action.
Yeah, and I've got a couple examples that come to mind. There's a very large global insurer that we work with mutually with CSC, and they're leveraging again this hybrid cloud model. And I think it's real important to understand it doesn't matter the size of your organization. You can be the biggest insurer, you can be the smallest. It doesn't matter, but they're leveraging in conjunction with services from Azure. They're leveraging services, hosted services, and biz cloud services from CSC, and they're managing that all through that cloud platform that we talked about, that agility platform that allows us to manage across those infrastructures. And so they're able to push out things like DevOps, or they're able to push out things like test dev environments, and again react very quickly to those environments. There's some other organizations that are actually using dedicated environments, so they're in a private cloud, however, it may be hosted off-site. So just because it's private doesn't mean it always has to be on-prem. So we have some customers that are running dedicated workloads inside of a CSC environment that allow them the flexibility to focus, a little bit more on maybe bare metal parts of the business or development. So there's a number of regional players that are doing that as well. So again, the key to the customer examples is, again, the flexibility in the hybrid cloud, looking at those services and leveraging third-party and managing across that infrastructure with those cloud tools we've discussed before.
Okay, thanks. Now, Brian, all this may seem daunting to somebody just getting into it, so how would you suggest that organizations get started?
Yeah, I mean, real quickly, Jeff, we see two common adoption patterns, both of which insurance companies are executing successfully. In one case, we start with, I'll call it an outside-in, business objective, right? So it typically follows that pattern of lay a small amount of greenfield and use that greenfield to trigger, transformation of the middle and back office. So that might be putting down some big data and analytics capability. That might be deploying a new customer portal or a broker portal, whatever that might be, and letting that kind of ripple through. The other one, and this is more common in the larger carriers, the nationals and the global multinationals, where they've been quite successful at really sort of taking a horizontal IT-led sweep across the enterprise, and they pick an element of the tech stack, whether it's compute storage, maybe it's network, maybe it's desktop, and they just lay out a template at a global level, work out the commercials with partnerships like us, and then almost it becomes a menu for the regions and the local entities to just draw down on both the reference architecture, the solution providers, and the commercials. So I think there's kind of two models, but in either way, it's kind of start small, get some success, and build on that success.
All right, thanks. Sabita, you get the last word. Tell us what key advice you would have for insurers that are looking to take this journey.
I think we spoke a lot about the technology side. I think the most important thing is for insurers to have an open culture and digital mindset and a way of thinking across different organization units, and that will help nurture ideas. And they should also have a solid platform to start with, and the right building blocks, which we discussed all through this conversation about the right infrastructure components and agile infrastructure, and having a coexistence of transaction-based and high-speed agile IT models. I think that is really critical. And one message is loud and clear: they can't do it all alone. And when they go for partners to do this, to help them in this journey, they should look for partners who have very deep industry insights and digital expertise. I think that would be my advice. And especially in terms of the cloud and the infrastructure transformation, they should be looking for a partner who should give them access to the most open and free cloud marketplace possible to deliver their organization's infrastructure needs.
Okay, thank you. On that note, I want to thank everyone for joining us for this live CSC Town Hall event, especially our speakers, Sabita Majukumar, Willie Reed, and Brian Wallace. Recording will be available shortly, just as soon as Google is able to process it. In the meantime, you can visit csc.com/townhall to see what exciting topics we will be covering in the coming weeks. Have a great day.
Thank you, Jeff.